How are we doing, everybody? We are back for week 5, the 5th episode of the Care Bear Fantasy Football Weekly Recap. Today, as usual, we're diving into scores, top players, bottom players, missed starts, injury news, the league board, and this week we will talk some trade reviews with one new trade happening this week, and we are going to come back to some older ones just to see how they are doing as it is week 5 now. But before all that, let's recap the NFL from week 5. Thursday night, we kicked off Colts-Broncos in an overtime game where the only scores were the kickers. Chase McLaughlin outscored Brandon McManus 12-9 as the Colts won. This game quite literally had no fantasy relevance. Alec Pierce, 8 catches, 81 yards. Maybe you want to pick him up. He's a rookie. He might be something. JT was out this game. Javonte Williams, as everyone knows, is out for the year. Not much happened this game. It was boring. Moving on to Sunday morning in London, the Giants moved to 4-1. Brian Daboll is proving that he is a coach. He belongs in this league. They beat the Cheeseheads 27-22 in a game where we once again have to question the Packers' legitimacy. Rodgers, he has a new lead receiver almost every week. This week it was Randall Cobb. He had 7 for 99 and almost nothing coming out of that two-headed monster of a backfield they have there. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon not doing too much. Meanwhile, New York still led by Saquon. Even while he left the game momentarily, he still had 16 touches for 106 yards and a touchdown, while Darius Slayton had a quiet 6 catches for 79 yards. Going into the noon slate, Kenny Pickett, he made his first NFL start. Great to see it, first-round quarterback. He played the Bills. It was pretty bad. The Bills dominated 38-3 in a game where Josh Allen once again showed he is the MVP front-runner. He had 466 total yards, obviously the team's leading passer, but also the team's leading rusher. 4 touchdowns. His guys and they were Gabe Davis, who had 171 yards and 2 touchdowns on only 3 catches. Stephon Diggs, the usual, 8 catches for 102 and a touchdown. And Khalil Shakir with 3 for 75 and a touchdown. As for the Steelers, it wasn't all terrible. Kenny Pickett only had 1 pick and 327 yards, which is a little promising. He was spacing the ball out. He got all 3 of his top receivers, that being Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and George Pickens. They all had 5 or more catches and 50 or more yards. George Pickens having the best day of the 3, something to note. Bad news, though, that might be worth noting is Pat Freiermuth. He did get hurt, but he played 3 quarters and only had 2 targets. Meanwhile, Najee Harris only had 4 targets. Najee Harris so far in the season has yet to produce based on that top 12 draft ranking he had starting the year. This week he only had 36 yards on 14 touches. That is not what you want to see from someone that you might have drafted in the first round. Next, the Chargers pulled a close win out against the Browns. It was 30-28 in favor of the Chargers. It was a great game. We saw Austin Eckler again proving why he is a top 3 to 5 fantasy running back. He produced almost 200 yards, 1 under 199, 2 touchdowns on only 20 touches. He was getting 10 yards every time he touched the ball. While outside, Keenan Allen once again missed the week, re-aggravating that hamstring. We had back-to-back Mike Williams boom games. Let's take a moment there. Mike Williams, he is known for that roller coaster ride in fantasy football, but he has had back-to-back big games. He had 10 catches for 134 yards. Meanwhile, for Cleveland, the Chubb dominance continues. 17 carries for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. Listen, put me as the Browns head coach. We're not losing a game. I mean, this guy is averaging 8 yards a carry. Why is he only getting 17 touches? If you get the ball at the 20, you give him the ball 10 times. That's 80 yards and a touchdown. What are you doing? Stop throwing the ball. I don't get it. Anyways, give him a Derrick Henry workload and see how good the Browns will be. But the coaches there are idiots. Also for the Browns, Njoku, 6 for 88, and Amari Cooper had 7 for 76 and a touchdown. Then we had an NFC North rivalry game. Bears-Vikings, it was a blowout to start. Vikings just pulling ahead as most people expected, but as we all know, the Vikings can't hold a lead and the Vikings can't play up to the standards that they are supposed to be at. The Bears nearly mounted a comeback, but only to fumble away another game, and they lose 29-22. But it was a different game for the Bears this week. They didn't just rely on the run game as they have over the first 4 weeks. Justin Fields had 200 yards and a touchdown through the air. That is something that Bears fans should be happy about. He is finally starting to throw the ball. And David Montgomery returned. In his return, he had 16 touches, 82 yards, and a touchdown, and a misspelt jersey. He came back after injury, and he showed he is the RB1 of this offense, regardless of how good Khalil Herbert has looked in his absence. He is the one who runs that backfield. So if he is there, he will be the lead back. Meanwhile, for the Vikings, the usual suspects showed up. Dalvin Cook had 20 touches, 121 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Justin Jefferson had 12 catches for 154 yards. Next, Lions. What happened? The Patriots won this game 29-0. It was a stomping. Third-string quarterback Bailey Zappi managed to keep the Lions down. His main guy in the day, Jacoby Myers, had 7 catches for 111 yards and a touchdown, while behind Zappi, Ramondre Stevenson, 27 touches and 175 yards and a touchdown. Talk about a breakout game. Damian Harris did go down in this game, and he is looking at missing multiple weeks, so Ramondre could be a running back for the next couple weeks to watch out for. Meanwhile, the Lions, DeAndre Swift, still out. Amon-Ra playing on a snap count, playing hurt, and DJ Chark was out. Meaning, once again, Jamal Williams was the lead back. He only had 56 yards, no touchdowns. And the lead receiver was Josh Reynolds. He had 6 catches for 92 yards. Then we have Seattle involved in another high-scoring affair. That was a team that we were not looking at to be anything special coming into the year, but they are putting up points. They did come up short 32-39 against the Saints. Geno did all he could do. He had 268 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He was throwing pretty much at Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Lockett had 5 catches for 104 and 2 touchdowns. DK had 5 catches for 88 and 1 touchdown. Meanwhile, rookie running back Kenneth Walker, love to see it. 8 carries, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Expect to see him a lot more as Rashad Penny is officially out for the year. Let's take a moment. Everyone crack open one, take a sip. As we say, hate seeing injuries, especially season long, on young guys that have a bright future in the league. Opposite, the Saints had a monstrous game from Taysom Hill. The tight end, Taysom Hill, yes, he is now officially labeled as a tight end in ESPN. He is no longer a QB tight end. He is strictly tight end. He had 9 carries, 112 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And then he had a throw for a 22-yard touchdown. He had 4 touchdowns and 134 total yards. Meanwhile, Alvin Kamara is finally starting to see some days of old. He had 29 touches for 194 yards, but he had no touchdowns as Taysom Hill took all of them. But he did have a good game, and he should be back to his normal self. Also out wide, do the Saints have a new receiver 1? Jarvis Landry was out this game, and Michael Thomas. Olave, he did step up. He had 4 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown, but he did take a scary hit and is currently in concussion protocol. Next, Dolphins. It is finally time for Teddy B. Everyone loves Teddy B. Everyone knows his story. Drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, but he has been plagued by injuries throughout his career that have kept him from being a franchise QB. We were ready to see him take this team to the next level as Tua is currently out indefinitely. And first snap, he was out of the game. Concussion in protocol. He did pass protocol, so we will most likely see him for week 6, but he did not play this game. 7th round rookie quarterback Skylar Thompson came in. He tried his best, but the Jets took this game over late and won 40-17. The Dolphins are bruised and battered all around. They are looking beat right now. Injuries happen. It sucks to see, but the Dolphins right now are taking a lot of injuries. But let's talk fantasy. Raheem Mostert, 19 touches for 122 yards and a touchdown, and he looks to have sole ownership of that backfield for the 2nd straight week. That's something to look at. Going into the year, we thought the Dolphins were just going to be a big mess in the backfield, but right now, Raheem Mostert is the head back and is looking like it will continue to be him. Meanwhile, for the Jets, rookie running back Breece Hall had 20 touches for 197 yards and a touchdown. Basically had that Austin Eckler stat line. And Michael Carter, he did not do much. He only had 21 yards, but he did vulture 2 touchdowns from Breece Hall at the goal line. And this is pretty much what we expected. Breece Hall every week has been getting more touches, more time on the field, more targets in the passing game, and he has just been looking flat out better than Michael Carter. He's just proving he's the better running back. And then as for the pass catchers this game, it was very quiet. Skylar Thompson, 3rd string, 7th round quarterback, and Zach Wilson, who's just not good. So both teams really just relied on their defense and run games. Unfortunately for the Dolphins, they were injured, so they took the beat down this game. Next up, we have the Tom Brady divorce game. We saw the Bucs barely squeak by the Falcons, 21-15. This game had a pretty controversial roughing the passer call late. Not many people were happy about it. Lots of Twitter people very mad. NFL players, random Twitter users, everyone all across very mad about what they saw. But regardless, Tom Brady had 350 yards and a touchdown, while his backfield best friend, Leonard Fournette, had 24 touches for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. Meanwhile, the Falcons somehow, like I said, they had 15 points. They stayed in the game close. I couldn't tell you how. Mariota had 147 passing yards, and the committee of running backs they have, because Cordarrelle Patterson is out currently, that committee includes the quarterback, Marcus Mariota, running the ball too. They had 150 yards and a touchdown, so we're looking at 300 yards of bad offense, but they somehow stayed in the game. Who knows? Then in a battle of mid, the Titans played the Commanders. They won 21-17 in a game where we saw the Carson Wentz of recent. He threw a game-ending interception, as he does. Downfall of Carson Wentz. Me personally, as an Eagles fan, love to see it. He left on very bad terms, and I love seeing him struggle around the league. The Titans, they only win when Henry eats. And what did he do? He ate 30 touches for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. Meanwhile, for the Commanders, we finally saw Brian Robinson. Love to see it. Coming back from being shot twice in the leg. He only had 9 carries for 22 yards, probably on a little bit of a snap count. But word is from Coach Ron Rivera is that we may see Antonio Gibson in the special teams next week, which means Brian Robinson will most likely be taking over as lead back. Also for the Commanders, De'Ami Brown had 2 catches for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns. Scary Terry, 5 for 76. Curtis Samuel, 6 for 62. A lot of good fantasy receivers on that team. If only they had a little bit of a better quarterback. And then in another mid-off game, we had the Jaguars and the Texans. This game was 6-6 all the way up until the 4th quarter, until Dameon Pierce closed the game with its only touchdown, making it 13-6 in favor of the Texans. Dameon Pierce had 29 touches, 113 yards, and as I said, the only touchdown of the day. Meanwhile, for the Jaguars, Marvin Jones had 7 catches for 104 yards, and Evan Ingram had 6 for 69. Christian Kirk was non-existent this game. He's been a big name on the Jags this year, but this game he was nowhere. Also, something we want to note is ETN has been quietly working his way in these last 2 weeks. He outtouched James Robinson 13-12, basically even, but it is something to note that they are even to begin with. At the start of the year, ETN was nowhere near James Robinson, and he actually outperformed him yardage-wise, getting 114 to J-Rob's 39. Then the Niners dismantled the Panthers 37-15 as Jeff Wilson led the way with 18 touches for 132 yards and a touchdown. Meanwhile, Debo, he only had 4 touches. He had 32 yards on those 4 touches and managed a touchdown. But it's a little weird seeing your franchise receiver that you paid all that money only getting 4 touches. It's probably a fluke, but we will see. And then we're going to go to the Panthers, and we want to congratulate the Panthers on finally firing Matt Rule. It took you long enough, to say the least. That guy was a moron. It is so good to see him out. But we are sad to say the Baker revenge season may be on halt, as he went out of the game with a high ankle sprain, and initial reports were saying multiple weeks expected for missed time. But current reports are saying that he is labeled as day-to-day, being that he is a person with a higher pain tolerance, apparently. But regardless of all that, regardless of QB, McCaffrey does what he does, and he had 104 yards and a touchdown on 20 touches. Then we continue on to the Cooper Rush season. The Cowboys beat the Rams 22-10 behind the rushing duo of Pollard and Zeke. Cooper Rush only had 16 passes this game. Not a very prolific passing game, but did they need it? No. But we want to look at the numbers. Zeke had 22 carries, only 78 yards. That is an average of 3.5 yards. That is just not a good average, especially for a running back that you're paying all that money to. That is your franchise running back. You are expecting him to be able to, I don't know, maybe at least get 4 yards a carry. Meanwhile, the explosive running back who a lot of people think should be the starter, Tony Pollard, only had 8 carries. 8. That is almost a third of what Zeke had, and he outgained him with 86 yards and a touchdown. Dallas, figure it out. You can clearly tell who the better running back is, and you're going to be better off if you start the better running back. But offense, while it does need a little bit of figuring out, the defense is on one. They had 5 sacks, 2 fumbles, one of which they took to the house, an interception, and a blocked punt. I mean, come on. What could the Rams do? The Rams, Cooper Kupp, he tried his best. He had 7 catches for 125 and a touchdown, but that was about all they could get. It is looking like the Super Bowl hangover is real. The Rams are currently sitting at 2-3. Next up, we had a battle of the birds in the desert. We had the 4-0 Eagles going up against the Cardinals in what a lot of people were calling a trap game. The Eagles came out on top 20-17. Eagles saw a quick start with Jalen Hurts scoring 2 rush touchdowns and put them up 14-0, but after that, it was 6-17 in favor of the Cardinals. But that final score, as we said, the Eagles were just barely able to hold on, and the Cardinals missed a game-tying field goal at the end of regulation. Lucky Philly. Out wide, Dallas Goedert had 8 catches for 95 yards, and Devonta Smith had 10 catches for 87. As for the Cardinals, their 2 speedy wideouts balled out. Marquise Brown had 8 for 78 and a touchdown, while Rondale Moore, finally healthy, welcome back, 7 catches for 68 yards. Sunday night was our game of the week. Bengals-Ravens was a tight defensive showcase all the way through. And what way to end a game other than a Justin Tucker game winner? I feel like we've seen it. We've said it a million times. This guy is the best kicker to do it. Justin Tucker. He wins the game for the Ravens 19-17. For the Ravens, Mark Andrews had 8 for 89 and a touchdown. Meanwhile, the other tight end on the Bengals, Hayden Hurst, he was putting up some competition, 6 catches for 53 and a touchdown. But in the end, Zach Taylor's incompetence lost the game. Zach Taylor is not a good coach. He is being carried by just the pure talent on his offense. His play calling is terrible. With all the weapons on that team, I know T. Higgins only played about 10 snaps. With all those weapons, they only produced 290 yards. That is awful. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Hayden Hurst, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon. There are so many weapons, and they just don't produce, and you have to blame the coach. The play calling just does not look good. Players do not look like they're in a position to make plays. I don't know. Maybe it's another Matt Nagy situation. And then lastly, Monday night, AFC West throwdown. The only thing getting thrown down was that cameraman from Davante Adams at the end of the game. What was that about? The Chiefs beat the Raiders 30-29. Patrick Mahomes Christ returned. He had 292 yards and 4 touchdowns. All 4 of those going to Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce put up a red zone menace stat line. 7 catches, 25 yards. He is averaging about 3.5 yards per catch. And he had 4 touchdowns. As for the Raiders, Davante Adams only had 3 catches. That is your franchise receiver. You paid him a lot of money to steal him from the Packers, to steal him from Aaron Rodgers. He only had 3 catches, but he made the most of it. 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. And a police report. That cameraman is trying to get the bag, as he should. Also, Josh McDaniels finally realizing Josh Jacobs is a good running back. Running backs from Alabama tend to be good. 26 touches for 193 yards and a touchdown. Now, moving on to points this week. We always got to start at the bottom, and we have a familiar name. Ryan, our shit king for week 5. Once again, 3 times by week 5. We have seen this guy here at the bottom quite a bit. Something's going on, man. 98.4, can't crack triple digits, though it was not enough to outdo the yearly worst performance of Johnny of 83.8 in week 3. Ryan had 6 of 10 players fail to hit double digits. That is not good. And then our top scorer of the week was Bailey with 193.5, just missing that top score set by myself last week of 194.8. Bailey had 6 players finish with at least 20 points or more, and then those 4 players that didn't crack 20, not a single one of them didn't make at least 10. Every single player on his roster hit double digits. That is something to look at. That is a scary team. On to this week's blowout. Craig beat Andy 187.6 to 118.6. That is a difference of 69 points. Nice. But that was unable to reach Ryan's week 4 blowout over Johnny by 93 points. That is currently our highest differential game. As for our matchup of the week, Tommy beat Johnny by 150.9 to 138. That was a difference of 12.9. That was a good matchup, coming close to our game of the year, but not quite. Again, that was week 1. Ryan beat Andy by only 3.5 points. Other matchups saw Reggie beat Ryan 161.7 to 98.4, and Bailey beating Jews 193.5 to 153.6. Now let's move on to some of our top players this week. QB1, the MVP front runner, the MVP vote getter, Josh Allen, 35.2 points. Patty Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, only other QBs in the top 25. Keep an eye on those guys. RB1, we had a tie. Lenny Fournette and Austin Eckler both scored 35.9. Great games from those guys. Makes sense to see them up there. They were guys that were picked early in the draft, as they should be. Meanwhile, Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, and Nick Chubb all also had over 25 points. Your receiver 1 on the week, Gabriel Davis, on only 3 catches. This guy touched the ball 3 times in a 60-minute football game. He had 32.1 points. That is insane. Following behind him, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Tyler Lockett, and Cooper Kupp all had 25 or more. And then tight end 1, Taysom Hill. As a tight end, he didn't catch a single pass, but he still scored 34.1. What a game from him. That is crazy to say. A tight end not catching a single pass, but he scored 34 points. Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews were the only other tight ends to score over 20 points. And then on to defense, the Cowboys. As we mentioned earlier, that defense looks good. Whole bunch of turnovers over there, and a touchdown along with it. They had 22 points. The Patriots and the Niners also scored over 15 points. Now we have the exact opposite as we do. The lows of the week. And as we all know, we're only highlighting players that were started by us. The players in the league, meaning bench players and waiver players, do not count, as they are riding the bench or clearly just not owned for a reason. And then also, we will be leaving players who may have gotten injured during the game off the list, as that, that's not cool. We don't want to highlight those guys. So starting with QB, we have Jared Goff with 5.9, followed by Russell Wilson with 9.2. Funny little side note, both of these QBs were started by Ryan. Figure out your QB situation, man. Maybe that'll help you not be shit king. Then at running back, we have J.K. Dobbins at 4.4, followed by Jamal Williams at 5.6, James Robinson at 5.9, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 6.5, Najee Harris at 6.6, and James Conner at 7.3. He did get hurt in the game, but he played plenty of snaps to a point where he could have made a little bit more points than that. At receiver, Christian Kirk, how they fall from grace. He only had 2.1. He was followed by Jalen Waddle with 5.3. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 5.8. Like we said, he wasn't necessarily on a snap count, but he was playing dinged up. But he played a majority of snaps, and he only scored 5.8. We're just going to have him on the list. Brandon Cooks had 6. A.J. Brown, 6.2. Adam Thielen, 6.7. Drake London, 7.5. And Robert Woods, 7.7. At tight end, T.J. Hockenson, after a huge week 4, had 1.6. Not good. And then he's the only tight end we're going to highlight. Other tight ends did well enough to where we're not really going to mention them, especially seeing as tight ends have been one of the most inconsistent positions. We're not going to worry about guys putting up like 7, 8 points. And then lastly, everyone knows defense wins championships. So the Packers and the Eagles only putting up 3 points on defense is not a good sign. Now we're looking on to some big days that guys had, but they were stuck on the bench. And for this, we're going to address any players who scored over 20 or they were ranked as a top 10 player in their position group this past week. So we're going to start off with Andy. He benched Breece Hall, the RB4. He had 27.7. And he also benched Jeff Wilson, who was RB12 with 20.2. Ryan benched Jimmy G. He was the QB8 on the week. He only had 18, but QB8, that's much better than the 2 he started. And Reggie benched Jacoby Myers, the receiver 8 with 24.1, and Marcus Mariota, QB9 with 18. And lastly, we're going to take a quick look at the league. A little bit of disappointment, a little bit of shame here. Taysom Hill, De'Ami Brown, Geno Smith, and Tevin Coleman. All those names are unowned on the waivers. And you know what they did this past week? They balled out. All those guys had 20 or more points. Now let's do a quick injury recap to start week 6. So we are doing these on Tuesday, so these aren't always consistent throughout the week. There is a lot of late injuries. There's injuries that happen in practice. But this is just what we got as of Tuesday. Tyreek Hill, questionable. He was seen after the game on Sunday with a walking boot, but is said that he is fine. Dalton Schultz, he re-aggravated that PCL on Sunday against the Rams, but he is expected to play on week 6. Mike Thomas, optimistic to return to action in week 6. Drake London had a late knee injury in the 4th quarter of the game on Sunday, but he never entered the medical tent. He is expected for week 6. Kyle Pitts still questionable. We have no news on him. Jahan Dotson was a non-participant at practice on Tuesday. Questionable for week 6. The Commanders do play on Thursday this week, so that is something to watch. Carson Wentz, another Commander. He was limited on Tuesday, so again, something to watch for Thursday. He's questionable for week 6. Rashad Penny, as we said, out for the year. I'll drink to that. Poor guy. He was looking good these past 2 weeks. Rashad Penny, he just gets injured every year. Hate to see it. He is talented. When that guy gets the ball, he gets yardage. He is out for the year with a broken shin bone. Then we have Jonathan Taylor. He is optimistic for week 6. He did not play Thursday night this week, but he is hoping to play for week 6. Then Russell Wilson. Apparently he played week 5 with a partially torn lat, but he got a shot and he should be ready for week 6. Jarvis Landry expected for week 6. Damian Harris is expected to miss multiple weeks with a hamstring injury, as we said earlier. Ramondre Stevenson, look for him. He's going to be big. T. Higgins re-aggravated the ankle Sunday night and is now listed as day-to-day. Pat Freiermuth, concussion protocol. Olave, concussion protocol. Keenan Allen, still questionable after 4 weeks. He re-aggravated that hamstring last week in practice. He's labeled day-to-day. Rashad Bateman, questionable with that foot injury, hoping that week 5 was the only week he will miss from that. James Conner, questionable with a rib injury. It is said that Arizona is being cautious with him. Teddy Bridgewater, as we said earlier, he was put in protocols on Sunday, and he has apparently already cleared them. Naheem Hines in protocol. Jameis Winston, questionable with that back and ankle, still might miss a 3rd straight week. Dawson Knox, still questionable with that foot injury. And then Baker Mayfield, as we said, the initial diagnosis said multiple weeks, but it is now saying that he is day to day. We will see how that goes. On to our league board. We have a short one this week. Not too much. People cut down on the amount of words they were going with. Tommy said, all these white people out here think they cool. I'm him. And then Ryan said, Clyde cost me $1,200. We've been trying to tell you, man, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on a fluke streak. He is not a guy you want or a guy you want to bet on. That's for sure. And then Andy said, I once again suck. Nice short league notes from the guys this week. That's what we like to see. Now, this week we have a new trade that we're going to look at. Bailey went ahead and traded Deontay Johnson and J.K. Dobbins. Johnson is currently the receiver 32, averaging 11.6. And J.K. Dobbins is currently RB 47, averaging 10.9. He traded those guys to Tommy to get CeeDee Lamb in return, who is currently receiver 18, averaging 14.9. Now, all of these guys have a lot of stipulations going on with them. Deontay Johnson just got a new quarterback who is hopefully going to be better than Mitch Trubisky. Kenny Pickett, that first-round pick, and J.K. Dobbins, who has only played 3 games this year. And he looked good last week. This week, not too good, so we'll see how he does. He's still playing in limited action. And then in return, he got CeeDee Lamb, who he's averaging over 10 targets a game. He's averaging 15 points with a backup QB. Dak should be returning soon, and we assume that those 10 targets are going to stay around that area, but those 10 targets are going to be better. So we'll see how that trade looks as the season develops. But now it is week 5, so we're going to revisit some trades that are a little bit impactful on the league. To start off, we had Bailey, who traded Dameon Pierce, who is now the RB10, averaging 15.6. He traded him to myself, and in return got Juju Smith-Schuster, who is the receiver 50, averaging 9. Just a quick note, Bailey has yet to start Juju any week of the year, and Juju on the field has yet to demand targets as a receiver 1 on that team. Obviously, there is Travis Kelce, but that receiver room, no one has stepped out as the true receiver 1 there. So as the season has progressed, this has been a win in my favor. We will continue to look at that. Dameon Pierce could fall off. Juju could take off. You never know. And then another trade we'll touch on is Ryan. He traded Leonard Fournette, RB7, averaging 18.3. Travis Kelce, tight end 1, averaging 22.4. And Devontae Adams, receiver 5, averaging 20.1. All to myself in return for Jonathan Taylor, who is currently RB31, averaging 12.6. And Mike Evans, receiver 21, averaging 17.4. Without going too deep into any of the numbers, you can listen to it, you can hear it. This has been a major loss for Ryan, and it is quite possibly going to be the clown trade of the year. Though it is only week 5, we will continue to follow this as the season progresses. Now let's look at our league next week. We have my little Uzi Hertz at 4-1, playing Ryan's, the worst team ever, sitting at 2-3. Reggie's 3-2, South Memphis Taint Destroyers, playing Tommy's 3-2, Racing with Rugs. Johnny's 2-3, 4 Loco for Life, playing Bailey's 4-1, McAfrican Americans. And lastly, Juice's 1-4, Team Laporte, playing Andy's 1-4, Shit Kings. And then let's get around to next week, NFL football. As we said, Thursday night, mid-Thursday night football game. Commanders visiting Chicago. That should be a snooze fest, especially on a Thursday night. Sunday, we have no London games this week, so we have our regular noon start time. We're going to start with San Francisco visiting Atlanta in what should be another easy San Francisco win. That is going to be a big game for the San Fran defense. Last week, they played Carolina. Atlanta, not too different. It should be a pretty easy San Francisco win. Put your bets. New England is going to visit Cleveland. This is probably going to be the most run-heavy game of the year. The Cleveland Browns already just a run-heavy team, and then the Patriots starting a third-string quarterback, most likely just going to rely on that running game, but we'll see. Then we have the Jets visiting Green Bay, where we'll see if Green Bay is truly fraudulent or not, or maybe we can say the Jets are maybe a team to look out for if they beat the Packers. You never know. Then we have the Jaguars visiting Indianapolis. Everyone knows how the Colts play against the Jaguars. I'm putting the house on the Jaguars this week. Come on. Minnesota's going to visit Miami to play the practice squad. No, in Minnesota, they'll play down to the level of Miami, but they'll probably stick it out in the end. That's just how they do. Kirk Cousins is a funny man. Cincinnati is going to visit New Orleans, where we have 2 top defenses going at it. Who knows? Maybe Taysom Hill has another 4-touchdown game. Maybe this week he has 5. Maybe Alvin Kamara finally gets one. Who knows? Then we have Baltimore visiting the Giants, where we will see how legit the Giants are. Their defense has been pretty good all year, but can they stop a threat like Lamar Jackson? And can they beat a good run defense against Baltimore? Baltimore has been a terrible pass defense, but a good run defense they have, and that is what the Giants rely on. Next, we have Tampa Bay visiting Pittsburgh, and the start for Kenny Pickett just gets rougher. He is playing back-to-back top defenses. As I said, this has got to be one of the worst starts to a career, going from Buffalo to Tampa Bay. Tough. Then we have the Carolina Panthers visiting the Rams. Carolina is in a little bit of disarray. Who knows if Baker's playing? Who knows if it's P.J. Walker? They're playing with the interim head coach. this should be a get-back game for the Rams. If they lose this one, I'm out on the Rams for the rest of the year. Arizona is visiting Seattle in a Battle of the Birds. And then this week's game of the week is a AFC divisional rematch that I think everyone remembers. Bills, Chiefs, two top teams. This should be a great game in the afternoon slate. Then Sunday night, the 4-1 Cowboys are looking to knock off the undefeated Eagles. We still have yet to hear if that's going to be Cooper Rush or Dak Prescott playing, but that is a NFC East rivalry game in Philadelphia. We'll see how that goes. And then Monday night, we have Denver visiting the Chargers. Will Russ finally cook? He got that shot in his arm to fix the partially torn lat. Maybe he's all good. And then this is our first week of byes, actually, week 6. So the Lions, Titans, Raiders, and Texans will all be at home resting this week. Make sure to get those guys out of your lineups and pick up guys if need be to replace them, or you should have some guys on your bench. And that is going to be it for this Tuesday. We will see you next week. Have a good one.